In this segment, I'll show you how to set up the Photoshop Elements screen, much as I did in the segment on how to set up the Photoshop screen. Now, Photoshop Elements has a few different styles of interface, and I started the program here, and across the top of the screen you can see four major tabs: eLive, Quick, Guided, and Expert. Not sure what eLive is, but these last three are different styles that Photoshop Elements offers to the person editing image files. And I'm going to direct you to pick the Expert style, not because it sounds more impressive than the others, but it's the style of interface that most closely resembles the full Photoshop interface. It's so much like the Photoshop interface that most everything that I show in the workshop using the full Photoshop will equally well apply to Photoshop Elements. I do that, though, not just because it's a convenient teaching aid, but the real reason is most of the people I know that use Photoshop Elements do so because they're just starting out editing images. They're not really sure they want to use Photoshop. They think it's confusing, and they think it's too expensive. So Photoshop Elements has always been a really good way to get into image editing, to learn how to edit images, and I think most importantly, because the interface is so much like the full Photoshop, everything you learn here can be transferred over if and when you decide you want to upgrade from using Elements to the full Photoshop. Right? Elements can do quite a bit and maybe most everything you'll ever need, but there are things that it cannot do. The most obvious one for me is that it can't edit 16-bit images. If you start with Elements and you use the Expert interface, you will never be dead-ended, because if you run into something that you can't do in Elements, everything you've learned in Elements will transfer very nicely over to the full Photoshop. Okay, so having said that, set the Expert mode of interface. Now, we'd like to see the tools on the left. So again, if we go up to the menu at the top of the screen, pick on Window and check Tools, then we get our toolbar on the left. Now, the tool options that we saw in Photoshop across the top, instead in Elements, pops up at the bottom. And you see at the bottom of the screen here, we have this like a tool tab here, and the second option from the left is tool options. So if we click that, we get the tool options popping up at the bottom of the screen. Here I have the brush tool active, so these are the options for the brush tool. If I were to instead pick the lasso tool, we'd get the options for the lasso tool. All right, so I can click that tool options again to make that go away, provide a little more space to see the image. On the right, we're used to seeing our layers panel and a few of the other panels like properties. Again, across the bottom of the screen in the tool, like this toolbar here, there's an icon that says layers. If I click that, then we get the layers panel popping up on the right. All right, so having set the screen up like this, let's open an image. Once again, I will use that image of my granddaughter, Lena. So the screen is set up much as the same as Photoshop now. If we did need some of those other panels, like, say info or history, if we click on the More button at the bottom right here, we get a little pop-up that has all of those panels in it. There's info, there's history, and so forth. Okay, and I can click that closed if I want to. All right, so that's it. Having set it up this way, it looks very much like the full Photoshop.